Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. So the nursery rhyme goes, but we know today that this is not the case. First off, it wasn't her mother who was murdered, it was her stepmother, Abby Borden, who was murdered with not 40 whacks, but 19. And her father, Andrew, didn't get 41 whacks, he got 11 or 12 according to the coroner's reports. So what exactly happened on the morning of August 4th, 1892 in the Borden household in Fall River, Massachusetts? That's what we're going to talk about today, the case of Lizzie Borden, a murder mystery that has intrigued and fascinated for over 130 years and continues to do so. Let's get right into it. First, we're going to start with who was in the house that morning. So we have, of course, Andrew and Abby Borden, Lizzie's father and stepmother. We have, of course, Lizzie Borden herself. We have Bridget Sullivan, the maid, the live-in maid. And we have a man by the name of John Morse, who was Lizzie's uncle that was staying over from the night before. Now, there would have been Lizzie's sister who also lived in the house but wasn't there that day, her sister Emma. She was 16 miles away at a seamstress friend of hers' house where she was having a dress made for her. And she had been there for a few days. So she was nowhere around when these murders took place on that day and nowhere around anybody involved in this case. So those were the only people in the house. Let's now look at the timeline of events that took place from the morning up until the murders were known about. And that is, Bridget Sullivan wakes up and she makes breakfast for the family. Everybody joins for breakfast except for Lizzie. Lizzie stays in bed. She says later that she's not feeling well because of some food poisoning that was going around that all of them were experiencing, by the way. And she wanted to stay in bed. Plausible. So a little while after breakfast, John Morse says that he has to leave and tend to some relatives. He's going to go visit some relatives of his in town, on the other side of town, and he does so. He does so about 8:30 a.m. Shortly after that, Andrew Borden leaves the house. He says he has some business to tend to, and he goes out and takes care of his business, leaving only Abby Borden, Lizzie Borden, and Bridget Sullivan in the house. Abby Borden, Lizzie's stepmother, instructs the maid Bridget to go out and clean the windows of the house in and out, and Bridget does so. She goes out, she's cleaning the windows, and at this time she sees a neighbor friend of hers who comes over and is talking to her. And while she's cleaning the windows, she does say that she can see Abby Borden moving about inside the house, doing her chores on the inside. Later on, Andrew Borden at around 10 a.m. comes home and he's trying to get into the house, but the door is locked and he's having trouble getting in. Bridget helps him in. Andrew isn't feeling well and neither is Bridget. Again, remember that everybody was experiencing some food poisoning. So she sees him come home and she's trying to help him into the door. When she does this, she later testifies that she hears Lizzie laughing on the inside while Andrew was trying to get in. When they do get in, they see Lizzie on the staircase coming down from the upstairs where the bedrooms are. And Andrew asks Lizzie where Abby is, and she says that Abby received a letter from a friend of hers who wasn't feeling well and that she went to see her and check up on her. He doesn't ask any more about it. He's not feeling well. He goes into the parlor and lays down on the sofa and wants to take a nap. Bridget goes back out to do her chores on the windows to continue. And Lizzie later on comes out there at around 10:45 or 10:50 and tells her about some clothing sale that's going on and that she should go and take advantage of it and get some clothing. And Bridget, not feeling well, says she would rather not. She just wants to finish up her chores and go upstairs and take a nap. So Lizzie tells her to go ahead and do that and goes back inside. Bridget goes in a short while later, goes up to take the nap that she wants to do, and is awoken a little while later by Lizzie screaming, telling her that her father had been murdered. She instructs Bridget to go call Dr. Seabury Bowen, who's a family doctor and family friend. He lives close by. She does so. He comes over and he sees Andrew Borden's body. He's hacked, he's mutilated. His left eye is popped out and it's split in two. And he instructs them to call police. They do so. Police come a little while later and they question everyone as to what happened. Then they question Lizzie and ask about the whereabouts of Abby Borden. She gives them the same story about Abby receiving a letter from a friend, and then changes the story and says that she actually saw Abby come home and go upstairs. So remember all this, because this is the rundown of the case as to what happened. So they find both bodies. They find Abby Borden in the bedroom upstairs between the bed and the dresser. That's what happened. That's how the bodies were found, and then the investigation ensues. So with forensic reports, we know that Abby Borden was killed about a half hour before Andrew got to the home at 10 a.m. She was killed at about 9:30, according to the forensics of it and the coroner's reports. And then Andrew was killed shortly after he got home, somewhere between 10 and 10:45. Andrew Borden was killed. So about an hour to an hour and a half almost of difference between Abby and Andrew being murdered. The only person in the house at this time was Lizzie. But we have to remember that. Bridget was outside. She was seen outside by neighbors, and she was also confirmed to be outside by Lizzie Borden herself. So John Morse comes to the house a little while later while the investigation is taking place and police are there. John Morse comes back to the house because he was invited back by Andrew, who told him to come and have dinner with the family. And he sees the bodies. He goes in at first, he sees the bodies, and then he goes back into the backyard. He has a pear and just sits down and eats the pear, and he's pretty much in shock. Like, he just sits there and doesn't really say or do anything much else. He was considered a suspect, but this was ruled out because remember, John Morse, he went to see some relatives. So he says, this was confirmed. They spoke to relatives, and the relatives did say that he went to see them. But there was also one more detail that confirmed John Morse's supposed innocence, if you would say that, is that he was on a trolley car, a streetcar, with 7 priests. A pretty odd detail. So the conductor of this car was asked about this, and he confirmed that yes, in fact, there were 7 priests in the car that day, that morning, and at that time. And John Morse was there. So John Morse's alibi stands up. He obviously was nowhere around when the murders were taking place. He was nowhere around anybody involved. He was on the other side of town visiting his relatives. This leaves only Lizzie and Bridget in the house when both murders are taking place, or rather only Lizzie in the house with Bridget outside of the house washing the windows. So again, remember that when Andrew comes home, Bridget testifies that she hears Lizzie laughing about Andrew laughing at something while Andrew is trying to get in. They get in and they both see Lizzie on the stairs. Lizzie tells Andrew about the letter, the supposed letter that Abby got, and says that she left to go see her friend. Now, this is not something, in my opinion, that you could say you mistook. This is something that never existed. The letter never existed. It was never produced. No friend ever corroborated this or anything of the sort. So it was just completely made up. Why would Lizzie make such a thing up, saying that Abby wasn't in the house and that she went to see a friend? The friend was never named from what I understand, and the letter, like I said, never produced. So he goes to sleep. At around this time, Bridget goes back outside, and this is at around 10 a.m. Bridget doesn't come back into the house until almost 11 o'clock a.m. and goes upstairs to her bed, not seeing anyone, not passing by anyone, just goes straight up to her bed because she's not feeling well from the food poisoning, leaving the only person, again, in the house to be Lizzie. So later on, while the trial is going on, people have questioned whether Lizzie had any blood on her, because, of course, with the nature of the murders, there would have been blood splatter everywhere. It would have at least got on the clothes of the assailant. So they questioned this, and people confirmed, no, there was no blood on Lizzie Borden. So this kind of seems, like it's in her favor. However, during the trial, a woman named Alice Churchill, a friend of Lizzie's who lives close by, does testify that while her, Lizzie, and Lizzie's sister Emma, a few days after the murder, were sitting in the kitchen, Lizzie pulls out a dress that she had hidden under the cupboards. Why does she have a dress hidden under the cupboards? And what does she do with this dress? She throws it in a fire. She throws it in a fire and burns it to get rid of it. They ask her why she's doing this. She says, well, this old dress has paint on it and it's ruined. It's an odd thing to do, to say the least, when you're a prime suspect of 2 murders of your father and stepmother, and the question is coming up of whether there was blood on anyone in the house who might have done it. So again, she has a dress tucked under the cupboard for some reason instead of just in her dresser or anywhere else, and she burns it to get rid of it. Now the weapon is said to be something like a hatchet. So hatchets were found in the cellar of the house, and one in particular is what caught interest of the police. They found a hatchet head that had been broken off. Now, some reports say that the handle was never found, but actually this is not true. The handle was found. It was just lost by police during the whole investigation. It seems a lot of things were botched, and they lost the handle of the hatchet, but they still kept the hatchet head, which they said was pretty clean. Now, the head of the hatchet was found tucked under like ash and other debris in a chimney in the cellar. So when they found it, they examined it. It seemed pretty clean, except that it did have stains on it that they said looked like could be dried blood. And also there was hair found on it. Obviously, if this was the murder weapon, that does seem right, because hair would be on it, being that the victims were hacked in their face and head. So this is what was found in the cellar and presumed to be the murder weapon. So that's the facts that we know that are conclusive. Those are the facts that don't have any controversy around it. If you read or watch any videos about this case, you're gonna go into a lot of contradictions, a lot of confusion. So I don't want to get into those. A lot of assumptions about the relationships of the family and all. And some of these things were never proven at all, and some of them were just flat out debunked. So it never happened. So we're not going to talk about that. We want to talk just about the facts. So my opinion, who exactly I think committed these murders? From everything I've read or everything I've seen about this, I have to point at Lizzie. It only makes sense that Lizzie Borden was the only one who was in the house at the time of both murders. She was the only one that seemed to have any way of doing it without anyone else seeing it. She stayed inside the house, and if you look at the timeline again from when Andrew Borden came home, and remember, Abby is already dead at this time when he comes home. And Bridget didn't know about it. Apparently, Lizzie pretends she didn't know about it, or I shouldn't say pretend. Lizzie doesn't know about it, but she's in the house and dead at this time. And remember, Lizzie made up a story of Abby Borden leaving. She made up a story of her getting a letter and leaving the house. She obviously never left the house. She obviously never got a letter. Where did this story come up? Why did Lizzie Borden hide a dress under the cupboards, and why did she decide to burn it right then and there, especially at around the time when people are questioning who might have done it and was there any blood on anyone in the house? So that's my opinion as to who done it. I have to say it was Lizzie. Now, the Borden house today is a bed and breakfast and a museum, and you can visit it. You can spend a night there. You can also do ghost hunts, which I plan on going there one day. It's on my bucket list. So that's going to be it for this case, for this video. I hope you like this one. Do like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. And as always, stay slashing.